Part 1: The Strength Hidden in Silence. What if I told you that the most devastating answer to disrespect isn't noise? It isn't a fiery rant. It isn't some dramatic monologue meant to crush the room. No, the sharpest blade you'll ever carry is silence. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic minds, once declared, "It's not what happens to you, but how you respond that matters." Most people stop right there. They memorize the line, post it online, maybe whisper it to themselves when life stings. But here's the missing piece. It's not only about how you respond. It's about mastering the art of not responding at all. How to vanish. How to detach. How to let your absence slice deeper than any words you could throw back. Think about it. When someone insults you, your instincts roar for revenge. You want to snap, clap back, humiliate them enough so they never dare again. That urge is natural. It's the animal in you. But Stoicism whispers something more dangerous. The true seat of power isn't in what you shout. It's in what you quietly deny, your focus, your time, your emotional presence. And let's be clear, this isn't about playing the meek saint, about turning the other cheek with naive passivity. No, this is about wielding silence as a weapon, one that rattles people to their bones. A silence that forces them to wrestle with themselves, without your energy to shield them. Epictetus said it best. No man is free who is not master of himself. That's the battlefield self-mastery. So if you've ever been overlooked, mocked, betrayed, or underestimated, this is for you. Because in this series, we're diving into 5 silent moves that will make people regret ever crossing you. All without you raising your voice. Before we begin, if this already hits home, pause for 2 seconds, hit the like button, subscribe for more Stoic wisdom, and tell me in the comments, what's your favorite silent power move? Remember, real power doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't ask for permission. It radiates through presence alone. Now let's begin. Silent move 1. Withdraw access without warning. There comes a moment of sharp clarity. A moment when you realize the strongest stance you can take isn't to explain, argue, or defend yourself one more time. It's to stop showing up. Not out of spite. Not as a dramatic protest. But because you finally understand a truth most people never do. Your energy is not public property. When someone continually disrespects you, they aren't just crossing boundaries. They're depending on your silence to let them. They assume you'll always stay. That your patience, your kindness, your emotional labor will always be on tap. In fact, they rely on it. Your consistency fuels their chaos. And that's why retreat, silent, total, unannounced, is devastating. The Stoics knew this centuries before psychology put it into words. Epictetus, born a slave and later revered as one of philosophy's greatest teachers, taught that real power isn't about controlling others. It's about reclaiming yourself. He insisted we don't suffer from events, but from our judgments of them. So when you withdraw, not with rage, not with theatrics, but with calm detachment, you flip the entire emotional equation. This isn't weakness. It's what Epictetus called choosing the discipline of pain over the chaos of reaction. By cutting off their access, you make them face the one enemy they've always avoided, themselves. Breaking the cycle. Most people live in patterns. They expect fights, long texts, tears, or endless debates, because those patterns keep them in control. But when you disappear from the script, silence becomes unbearable. Suddenly, there's no one to provoke, no one to manipulate, no one to blame. That's when their suffering begins, not because you confronted them, but because you refused to. History echoes this. Warriors across cultures prized restraint, not out of weakness, but because they knew true victory lay in patience. The samurai of Japan trained not just in combat, but in stillness. An emotional fighter is predictable, but a still one, silent, unreadable, that is terrifying. Your silence becomes a mirror, and mirrors don't argue. They expose. Without your noise, they're left staring at the reflection of their own behavior. And that's far more haunting than any speech. Ego versus wisdom. Here's where the Stoic path gets brutally honest. Walking away is hardest when the wound comes from those closest to you. A partner, a sibling, a friend. The ego aches to be heard, understood, vindicated, craves the last word. But wisdom craves peace. And the Stoics chose peace even when it burned. Why? Because the sting of detachment fades. The poison of staying where you're not valued eats you alive. You might believe that leaving quietly is weakness, that silence means they've won. But Epictetus would challenge you. If someone has harmed you, why add to the injury by remaining entangled? By staying, you keep the chains intact. By leaving, you reclaim your freedom. That's why your absence isn't cruelty. It's sacred preservation. You are no longer burdened by those unwilling to grow. And here's the irony. When you leave without a word, you're remembered differently. Not as angry, not as broken, but as someone powerful enough to say nothing and still be heard. The echo of silence. Over time, your absence echoes louder than any final speech. They expected begging. Instead, you vanished. They assumed you'd circle back. But you never did. And in that silence, regret grows. Not because you punished them, but because you finally valued yourself more than their approval. Think of how many times you've lingered too long, hoping they'd change, hoping they'd recognize your worth, hoping your patience would buy their respect. But what did it ever bring? Exhaustion, emptiness, cycles of disappointment. Stoicism slices through that cycle. Tells you, you owe no one your peace. The only person who must accept your choice is you. Walking away isn't surrender. It's ascension. That's the first move. Withdraw access. No fireworks. No long speeches. Just quiet withdrawal. Because when they realize they no longer control your mind, your time, or your presence, that's when the real consequences set in. It's not revenge. It's evolution. It's not bitterness. It's boundaries. And once you master this, you'll see the path forward. Because withdrawal is only the beginning. Leaving creates the space. What comes next is even more powerful. Not just leaving, rising. Quietly, privately, unseen. Which leads us into silent move 2, the most misunderstood, yet most dangerous form of power you'll ever hold. Part 2, Silent Move 2, Rise in the Shadows. One of the most underestimated forms of strength is transformation in silence. We live in an age addicted to performance. Every success is broadcast, every step documented, every milestone measured by hearts and comments. But here's the truth. The most dangerous evolution doesn't unfold in the spotlight. It unfolds in the dark, in stillness, where no one suspects what's coming. That's exactly why leveling up in private is so unsettling. Especially to those who doubted you, dismissed you, or disrespected you. Because here's what they were counting on. They needed you stuck, predictable, easily triggered, permanently available. They fed off your wounds to keep you loud, visible, and emotionally chained to them. But what happens when you stop playing their script? What happens when your life begins to shift? And you say nothing. The Stoic path to inner ascent. Epictetus taught that all externals, praise, insult, wealth, even scorn, are beyond our control. What lies within? Our will, our discipline, our inner world. When you take the energy you once spent proving yourself to others and redirect it inward, you touch what he called true freedom. That's when you begin crafting an identity untouchable by applause or rejection. Think of Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, yet also its philosopher. He commanded armies, governed millions, but in his private journal Meditations, he constantly reminded himself not to be seduced by praise or rattled by criticism. He didn't write for the Senate. He wrote for his soul. And those quiet reflections, never intended for eyes but his own, have outlived every speech he ever gave. That is the power of private growth. When you rise in silence, your transformation echoes longer than your words ever could. The threat of quiet evolution. Make no mistake, your private rise disturbs people. At first, they shrug it off. It's a phase. They'll slip back soon. But when the silence lingers, when you stop orbiting their chaos, when your focus no longer bends to their gravity, they sense it. They can't explain it, but they feel the shift. Because your absence isn't empty. It's charged. While they're lost in drama, you're moving differently. You're studying, training, building your mind, refining your spirit. And here's the twist. You're not announcing it. You're not giving them updates to measure or chances to react. You're simply becoming someone they can't predict. Humans crave patterns. They need to know how you'll respond, what role you'll play in their theater. Break that pattern without warning and you unnerve them. Silent transformations of history. History is filled with quiet risers. Frederick Douglass, enslaved and forbidden to read, learned in secret. His masters believed ignorance meant control, so he educated himself silently. And when he finally spoke, his words shattered the foundations of slavery. Or Nelson Mandela, locked away for 27 years. No speeches, no stage, only study, reflection, and discipline in silence. By the time he emerged, he was not the man they caged. He was the leader who would reshape a nation. That's what happens when you level up in silence. People expect you frozen in place. When you rise unseen, you return unrecognizable. The psychology of private growth. Silence creates tension. People expect closure, a fight, an explanation. When you give them none, the silence gnaws at them. And while they sit in confusion, you're not idle. You're building. You're investing in what matters, your health, your mind, your craft, your future. The same people who thought they had you mapped out begin to feel something different in your presence. You carry yourself differently. You don't flinch under their gaze. You don't enter the old arguments. You don't seek their approval. That calm, grounded shift unsettles them more than any outburst ever could. Because suddenly you no longer fit the box they built for you. This is what Epictetus meant by freedom of the mind, refusing to let external noise dictate your inner course. Success doesn't need witnesses. Let's be clear. This isn't about pretending nothing affects you. It's about mastering where your attention goes. You're not hiding, you're healing. You're not ignoring, you're investing. And you're not doing it to punish them, you're doing it to preserve yourself. Because here's the revelation. Real success doesn't need spectators. The Stoics lived by this truth. Philosophy wasn't a slogan, it was embodiment. As Epictetus said, don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. That's the essence of private growth. Stop explaining your worth. Start becoming undeniable. The unsettling shift. Here's what cuts deepest. They notice the subtle differences. Your calm, your patience, your refusal to be baited, your peace that doesn't shatter under pressure. Slowly, it dawns on them. The version of you they once knew is gone. Not because you declared it, but because you transformed quietly, without permission, without warning. And that's when the regret begins, not from your silence, but from everything they did to make that silence necessary. They realize too late they've lost access to a version of you they never valued. Meanwhile, you've outgrown the game entirely. You've tasted peace. You've discovered the freedom of private growth. And you refuse to return. The beauty of the second move. This is the beauty of the second silent move. The more you rise quietly, the less you owe anyone an explanation. Every book, every workout, every hour spent sharpening your craft. It's not for them. It's not for applause. It's for you. For survival. For the person you're becoming. And by the time the world finally notices, it's already too late. Because you didn't rise for them, you rose beyond them. But growth in silence is only step 2. Because rising isn't enough. You also have to reclaim control over your emotions. And that brings us to silent move 3, a move far sharper than withdrawal or quiet growth. It's not about what you stop giving them. It's about what you stop feeling for them. Part 3, silent move 3, cut off emotional access. If disappearing rattles them, and if leveling up in secret unsettles them, then this third move shatters them. Because it severs the very root of their control, your emotions. Why they feed on emotion. Let's be honest, those who belittle, manipulate, or dismiss you aren't just reacting to what you do. They're siphoning energy from how you feel. It doesn't matter if it's rage, despair, or frustration. In fact, the darker the emotion, the sweeter the fuel. Every time you explode, argue, or beg for acknowledgement, you prove they still live rent-free in your inner world. But what happens when you shut off that supply? When your voice carries no fire? When your expression doesn't crack? When your heartbeat stays steady in their presence? Suddenly, they're left starving. That's the move that dismantles their illusion of control. The Stoic core of detachment. The Stoics mastered this long ago. They taught that while other people's actions are beyond us, our judgments about them, our emotions, are ours alone. Seneca reminded us, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. In other words, it's not the insult that wounds, it's the meaning we attach to it. To cut off emotional access doesn't mean going numb. It means reclaiming authorship of your inner world. It's saying, you may act as you wish, but my peace is not yours to disturb. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, faced betrayal, war, and loss daily, yet kept reminding himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That is sovereignty of the soul, the reaction they don't expect. Think of the script they depend on. They insult you, defend. They mock you, rage. They withdraw affection, you chase. They thrive on your reactions. Predictability is their power. But when you stop playing, the script collapses. They jab and you stay calm. They bait you and you don't flinch. They set the stage and you don't even show up. That quiet is not weakness. It's devastating. Because your stillness is armed with control. Echoes from history. History shows us the strength of this move. Socrates, on trial for his life, refused to beg or rage. Instead, he spoke with calm conviction, unnerving his accusers more than any outburst could have. His serenity was more dangerous than fury, because it proved he was untouchable. Or consider the samurai of Japan, who trained not just in combat but in mushin, no mind. It freed them from fear, anger, or pride. To their enemies, that unreadable presence was terrifying. When you master detachment, you carry that same aura, unreadable, untouchable. The psychology of indifference. Modern psychology calls this extinction of reinforcement. When someone gets a reaction, the behavior is rewarded, so they repeat it. But when reactions vanish, the reward dies, and eventually so does the behavior. First, they'll escalate. Sharper insults, harsher digs, louder theatrics, because they're desperate to draw blood. But when nothing lands, that's when collapse begins. They're forced to face the unbearable truth. They no longer hold the keys to your inner world. Not coldness, but clarity. This isn't about becoming frozen or unfeeling. Stoicism never meant erasing love, kindness, or joy. It meant choosing where to pour them. Emotional unavailability toward the toxic makes space for emotional presence with the worthy. It's not shutting down, it's redirecting. You're declaring, my heart is sacred, my peace is priceless, and I won't spend them on those who poison me. This is discipline at its sharpest edge. Because nothing is harder than refusing to react when every nerve in you wants to. The invisible shift. What does this look like? They throw a barb, expecting eruption. You answer with calm and walk away. They withhold affection, expecting you to chase. You stay unmoved, anchored in your own path. They spread lies, hoping to watch you unravel. You move with such composure that their words dissolve into air. At first, they'll call you cold, arrogant, heartless. But deep down, they'll know the truth. They've lost their grip. And the cruelest part? You didn't fight. You simply stopped feeding them. The liberation of the third move. This is where freedom truly begins. You no longer need to win debates. You no longer need to prove your value. You no longer need them to see you differently. Because silence itself has become the proof. Every insult that fades, every manipulation that fails, every trap that no longer snares you. These are victories greater than any argument. Those who once thrived on your emotions now wander thirsty in a desert you left behind. And you drink deeply from your own peace, from detachment to power. Once you deny emotional access to the wrong people, life opens. Energy once wasted on conflict fuels growth. Focus once shattered by drama is redirected toward purpose. And slowly, you begin to radiate something they cannot replicate. Peace. Peace not tied to applause. Peace not stolen by rejection. This is the most haunting form of revenge. A life they cannot touch. The third move completed. Let's connect the dots. Do you vanish into silence? You rise in secret, and you reclaim your emotions from the unworthy. By the time they understand what happened, the old version of you, the one they mocked, drained, or underestimated, is gone. In your place stands someone unshakable, silent, steady, sovereign. This is why cutting off emotional access isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It's the choice of who receives your peace, who holds your heart, and who is exiled forever. And in that choice, you've made the most devastating silent move of all, freedom. Part 4, Silent Move 4. Outgrow them completely. The final move isn't silence. It isn't private transformation. It isn't even emotional detachment. It's something greater, something irreversible. It's the choice to leave them behind forever. Why this move hurts the most. The first 3 moves disturb them because they strip away the energy they once fed on. But this last move destroys them because it erases them from your life entirely. Silence still hints at a possible return. Hidden growth might spark their curiosity. Emotional distance could look like a phase. But when you outgrow them, when your life advances so far that they no longer even appear in your rearview, that's when the deepest wound opens. Because it's not just that you walked away. It's that you stopped thinking about them altogether. The Stoic vision of outgrowing. The Stoics taught never to cling to what no longer serves the soul. Epictetus said, "When you let go of what you cannot control, you gain freedom." Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning to treat life as brief, too short to waste on trivial battles or the judgments of unworthy people. To outgrow is to live this wisdom at its highest level. It's not revenge. It's not about proving them wrong. It's about aligning so deeply with your purpose that their memory dissolves into irrelevance. The weight of finality. What unsettles them isn't your silence. It isn't your secret progress. It isn't even your emotional restraint. It's the permanence of your exit. Most people assume the cycle will continue. They hurt, you react. They leave, you pursue. They break, you repair. Even if you retreat, they expect you'll return because you always have. But when you don't, when you keep walking without a backward glance, when they realize you've not just closed the chapter but burned the entire book, that's when they unravel. Because nothing terrifies the manipulator, the doubter, the abuser more than this realization. They don't need me, not even as an enemy. Historical lessons of outgrowing. History echoes with this final move. Siddhartha Gautama, who became the Buddha, didn't run from his palace, he transcended it. His silence unsettled his family. His meditation confused them. His detachment angered them. But when he outgrew the illusions of wealth and power, he reshaped human history. Or Maya Angelou, scarred by silence, trauma, and abuse. She didn't stay chained to those cycles. She outgrew them, transforming pain into poetry, music, and wisdom that touched the globe. Those who once silenced her faded into irrelevance before the immensity of her purpose. That's the essence of this move. Irrelevance replaces influence. The psychology of moving on. True closure doesn't come from their apology. It doesn't come from winning the debate. It doesn't come from proving them wrong. It comes when you no longer need anything from them. Not their attention, not their validation, not even their presence. That's why outgrowing is stronger than revenge. Revenge still ties you to them. Outgrowing severs the tie completely. And once you outgrow, energy once bound in resentment becomes fuel for expansion. Your mind clears. Your focus sharpens. You stop measuring life by what they did to you, and start measuring it by what you've built without them. The silent proof. Here's the irony. When you've truly outgrown, you no longer care if they notice. And yet, they always notice. They notice the way you stand taller. They notice the doors opening in your life. They notice the calm on your face. The serenity of someone who doesn't even register their existence anymore. That quiet is louder than any argument. It says, "You can't touch me anymore. I've risen beyond your reach." The transformation they can't touch. This is the ultimate transformation. They can dismiss your silence. They can mock your hidden growth. They can sneer at your emotional restraint. But when you outgrow them, they're powerless. They can't drag you down. They can't guilt you into returning. They can't rewrite your story, Because your story has already moved beyond their chapter. You've risen to a higher plane. And when someone transcends, the game itself becomes meaningless. Living beyond their reach. What does life beyond them look like? It looks like waking with peace instead of bitterness. It looks like choosing relationships that elevate instead of deplete. It looks like building a life of purpose, creativity, and strength. So full and expansive that their memory feels small compared to your reality. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Stop debating with shadows. Start living in the light. That's the essence of outgrowing. The final cut. And here's the sharpest truth. You don't announce this final move. You don't draft a speech. You don't say goodbye. You simply move forward. One day they provoke you, and you're too busy shaping your future to notice. One day they expect you to chase, but you're already running toward destiny. One day they imagine they haunt you, but you've long forgotten their name. That's the truest silence. That's the real ending. The 4 silent moves together. Step back and see the full strategy. First, you vanish, removing the fuel of attention. Second, you grow in secret, transforming beyond their sight. Third, you reclaim your emotions, taking back your inner world. Fourth, you outgrow them, erasing their influence forever. This is how the silent moves work. Not through shouting, not through revenge, not through proving a point, but by becoming untouchable. The Stoics' ultimate revenge. And here's the paradox. Stoicism was never about revenge, it was about freedom. But if you practice these moves with sincerity, you'll discover that freedom itself is the sweetest revenge. Not because they watch you win, but because you no longer care if they see it at all. The more you detach, the less you crave revenge. The less you crave it, the more powerful your life becomes. And to them, that's unbearable. Closing reflection. So ask yourself, who still feeds on your silence? Who still survives on your emotions? Who still rents space in your head without paying? And are you ready to make the 4 silent moves, not to punish them, but to free yourself? Because when you do, you won't just unsettle them. You'll erase them. You'll step into the unshakable life the Stoics promised. And nothing, no betrayal, no insult, no memory, will ever touch you again. Part 5, Beyond the 4 Silent Moves. Creating the Untouchable Life. You've made each move. You've embraced silence. You've sharpened yourself in secret. You've reclaimed your emotions. And at last, you've outgrown them. But here's the question that lingers after the storm clears. What now? What do you do once the people who underestimated you no longer matter? What do you do with the silence you've carved out, the space you've reclaimed, the freedom you've earned? Because freedom without direction feels like drifting. Silence without meaning feels like a hollow room. And this is where most stumble. They cut people off, grow in the shadows, master detachment, and then get lost in the empty space they've created. That's why there is a 5th move. Not a move against them, but a move for you. The move to craft an untouchable life. Why this step is essential. If the first 4 moves are about release, the 5th is about creation. The Stoics never saw philosophy as merely dodging pain or brushing off insults. That's only half the work. The other half is deciding how to live once you've broken free. Epictetus didn't only preach detachment, he taught relentless discipline. Seneca didn't just warn against wasting time, he showed how to build wealth of the spirit. Marcus Aurelius didn't only write about betrayal, he wrote about duty, service, and rising for something greater than himself. Silence liberates you, purpose completes you. That's why the 5th move has nothing to do with them. It's about designing a life so solid, so luminous, that the past dissolves into irrelevance. Turning silence into power. The silence of the first move isn't meant to stay empty. Transform it into presence. Fill that quiet with study, with disciplines that toughen the body, with reflections that sharpen the soul. Silence isn't absence, it's concentrated attention. The modern world tries to smother you with noise. Scrolling, alerts, endless chatter. But when you guard your silence and treat it as sacred, it becomes a source of strength. This is why the Stoics prized it. Marcus Aurelius wrote at dawn before Rome could press upon him. Seneca examined his life in nightly reflections. Your silence is not a void, it is training ground, the soil where resilience takes root, turning hidden growth into living impact. The second move, secret growth, can't remain hidden forever. Not because you owe proof, but because growth naturally overflows. A candle doesn't ask to be seen. Its light pierces the dark. When you learn, you begin to teach. When you grow strong, you begin to protect. When you gain wisdom, you begin to guide. The Stoics lived not only for themselves, but for the world. Marcus Aurelius ruled with duty in mind. Epictetus taught to free others from mental chains. Your private growth should radiate outward, not as performance, but as a natural force. A tree doesn't beg permission to give shade. Neither should you. Turning detachment into emotional wealth. The third move, emotional withdrawal, emptied the poison. But it was never meant to leave you barren. Detachment is pruning. What grows back is emotional abundance. Love that is chosen, not clung to. Friendship that is free, not dependent. Compassion that flows, not drains. The Stoics didn't scorn love, they refined it. Marcus Aurelius cherished his children. Seneca's letters glow with affection. They didn't want numbness. They wanted right feeling. This is what you cultivate when you cut off toxic attachments. Love that is deeper, purer, and freely given. Turning outgrowing into transcendence. The fourth move, outgrowing, closes their chapter. But it also forces you to write a new one. If you no longer define yourself by them, who do you become? This is where transcendence begins. Outgrowing isn't just leaving behind, it's entering a higher plane. You stop asking, what must I escape? And begin asking, what am I here to build? The Buddha didn't just walk away from a palace. He built a path that changed the world. Mandela didn't just outgrow prison. He carried a nation into freedom. Maya Angelou didn't just outgrow silence. She transformed it into words that touched millions. Outgrowing is the ending. Transcendence is the beginning. The psychology of the fifth move. From a psychological view, the fifth move prevents relapse. Because when the void is left empty, the past creeps back. Old habits return. Old people reappear. Old wounds reopen. But when you actively build disciplines, communities, visions, you seal the gap. You create a future so compelling that the past loses its pull. Therapists know this well. Healing doesn't come from tearing out the harmful alone, but from planting what is meaningful in its place. The shape of the untouchable life. So what does it actually look like? Physically, caring for your body, not for vanity, but for strength. The body is virtue's tool. Mentally, feeding your mind with wisdom, not noise. Knowledge becomes your armor. Spiritually, cultivating stillness, reflection, and alignment with what matters most. Socially, choosing companions who uplift, not drain. Relationships that feel like gardens, not battlegrounds. Purposefully, living not for petty revenge or shallow validation, but for service, legacy, creation. This is the Stoic version of flourishing, not numb invulnerability, but rooted resilience. Like an oak in the storm, bending, never breaking. The final shift. Here's the paradox. The deeper you commit to building an untouchable life, the less you even think about the four silent moves. You don't strategize silence, it's simply who you are. You don't hide your growth. It radiates naturally. You don't rehearse detachment. Your emotions flow where they belong. You don't focus on outgrowing, you've already left the old world behind. At this stage, you're not reacting to anyone. You're simply living. And that unsettles them most of all because you're no longer playing their game. Closing reflection. So the fifth move is this: build an untouchable life. Not to prove them wrong. Not to parade your success. Not to glance back to see if they notice. But because this is what you were meant for. Silence freed you. Growth refined you. Detachment shielded you. Outgrowing released you. Now creation completes you. This is where their power ends, and your destiny begins. The Stoics called it eudaimonia, the flourishing life, rooted in virtue, immune to chaos. That is your final move. Not just to escape, not just to endure, but to live fully, freely, untouchably.